Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Adam. Wanted to bring you a wheel and wall class today. So we're actually going to make a series out of this. If you've taken a studio class from me with the wheel, then this would be pretty familiar to you. If you haven't taken one of my classes in the studio, a lot of fun. We combine wheel work with walls, so pretty self-explanatory, wheel and wall. So the things you do need a wheel. You do need a free wall, so a wall that is free of paintings or pictures or whatever's. It can be a door, right? But if you use a door, make sure the door is locked, or you have some kind of sign on said door, um, because you don't really want somebody opening the door while we're doing this stuff. So once you find your free space where you have a wall, your mat, your wheel, pull your short edge of your mat all the way up to the wall, so it's butted up against the wall, and then let the mat go forward. All right. So all those things in consideration. Let's get on our backs and start rolling out our backs. Ooh, so come onto your bums. Let's grab the wheel, place the wheel about mid-spine. Be about to the center of your mat, not too close to the wall. We just don't want to run into the wall. All right, and then slowly lift the hips, arms open wide, and then we start to find some support on the wheel. Take a few breaths here. Let the chest open up. Let the head drop back. Start to feel, supported by the wheel. To feel a few breaths enter and leave the body. And then we'll roll the wheel from the base of the back, base of the spine, all the way up to the top of the neck, and then back down. We'll do that a few times. So go as slow as you want to. The slower you go, the more therapeutic this could be. Just realigning vertebrae. It's taking a lot of time here. Arms can become involved if you want to, maybe grabbing the wheel, moving into this elbow to the ground, kind of more of a forearm wheel. Keeping the elbow squeezed next to the ears. You don't need to stay there. I'm just rocking motions forward and back. And take about 2 more breaths. All right. And then we'll bring our hips back down to the ground. Grab the shins, bring yourself forward. Wrap the arms in front of the shins, tuck your chin to your chest, lift through the crown of the head, take a deep breath in. And deep exhale. All right. Let's come on to our bellies. We're going to come into a low cobra warm-up. So not all of our poses today are going to involve the wheel. I'm going to face you guys so you guys can see what I'm doing, but you can just face onto your mat in the forward direction. So coming onto our bellies, we're going to take a 3-part variation of our cobra pose. All right, so typically we have our hands underneath the shoulders, and if that's a variation that you want to play with today, then go right ahead. I'm going to take a variation where we bring the arms out to the side and steeple the fingers. It's kind of like a Spider-Man version, I guess. Feet can be together, feet can be separated. All right, so each version of this we're going to take for about 30 seconds, right? So before we lift up, press your toes into your mat. Feel your glutes engage. All right. Now your lower body's very secure. Your lower body's your anchor here. We're going to press into the fingertips and then slowly lift your chest, keeping the elbows bent. This is our first official back bend today. All right, so ease your way into this. Press your glutes down, little compression into your lower back, keeping the elbows bent. Squeeze your fingertips. And see if you can pull your shoulder blades down towards the center part of your back, towards the spine. It's going to push the chest through. And then engage the glutes a little bit more. Feel your lower back engaged. And draw that energy up between the shoulder blades again. Keep the shoulders out of the ears. Hug the elbows in next to the ribs. Nice. Slowly shift the gaze up for one more breath. And then gently all the way down. Chin to the mat, gaze to the right, arms to your sides. Then we'll start to rock the hips side to side. So that can be windshield wipering the heels back and forth, releasing any tension in your lower back. And then we'll bring our chin back to center. Second set. Hands underneath the shoulders. Or if you like that variation we took with the hands steepled underneath the elbows. So whichever one feels best for you. Same kind of idea. Feet separated, maybe a little bit wider this time. So play around with how wide the feet are. All right. Exhale. Inhale, engage the glutes, slowly press into the hands. We're going to lift up. All right, find that place where you left off on last time. All right, so a little bit of depth here. Elbows stay bent, so we have that traction we can pull the chest through. Now maybe start to lift a little bit higher, but still keep the elbows bent. And draw the shoulder blades down. Now this is all up to you. You're going to your depth, so feel this out. All right. Breathe here for our last 10 seconds. Keep the glutes engaged. Maybe shifting the gaze up a little higher this time, but keep the shoulders away from the ears. Nice. Keep that openness in the chest. Take a breath. And slowly gaze comes forward as we release. Chin to the mat. Gaze left. Arms releasing to your sides. And that same idea, windshield wiper the heels back and forth. A little bit of movement here. And we have one more set here. Chin back to the mat. Hands underneath the elbows. All right, so I like that variation. If you want the other variation, go ahead. Play with the feet. You got wider, narrower, whatever feels best for you. Okay, 30 seconds. Last set here. Engage the lower body. Press the hip points down. Press into the fingertips. And on the inhale, we slowly lift up. So still keeping a bend to your elbows. So that bend to your elbows will help draw the shoulder blades down and give you that chance to pull the chest through. Give that little smile through the collarbones. Nice, strong into the glutes. Nice, feel it all the way up into the heart. And then see if you can get a little more openness in the heart. Open to the chest. Last 2 breaths here. Gaze shifting a little bit higher this time for your last breath in. And slowly all the way down. Gaze whichever direction feels best for you. Maybe lift the heels and we'll windshield wipe the legs side to side. Now from here, release the feet, press back into your child's pose. The knees wide, slowly making your way back here. And start to feel the release of any of that tension that we just created from all of those little back bends. Stay here for a few breaths. Feel the lengthening of your spine as you breathe in and out through the nose. All right, slowly press yourself back up. Okay, so we're going to get into our crescent moon pose. Before we get into crescent moon, just a quick thing about breath. Knowing what the length of your typical breath feels like in your practice is very, very important when we start to get into these deep poses. So one of the big indicators if you're too deep into a pose is when your breath starts to become irregular, maybe it cuts out on you or you hold your breath. Those are all indicators that you're too deep into a pose and you need to back out. So as we're warming up through this, pay attention to your breath, the length of your breath, the depth of your breath, and the sound of your breath. And if that changes through any of these deep poses that we get into, that's a good indicator to slowly bring yourself out because you might be too deep, okay? So as we warm up in these next couple poses, just continue to pay attention to how your breath feels, all right? So we're gonna move into crescent moon pose. So we've done this before, but now that we have the wall, we're gonna back our left leg up so the toes are pressing towards the wall. You can have the ball of the foot into the wall, or maybe just the toes pressing into it. So your choice here. Right leg forward. I'm gonna bring the wheel underneath the right hamstring and right behind the right calf. Now again, if that doesn't feel good for you, we're just looking for hip support, so you can roll the wheel back underneath the hip, but I personally like this variation for myself, okay? So the back toes are now pressing into the wall. That can give you that little bit of pressure to push this left hip forward, right? So you can play around with that if you want to, but we want to have this left leg pretty far back, so we're creating a lot of openness with this left hip flexor. All right, hands coming to your hips. Start to feel stable in your base. Now squeeze this right heel back. So you start to hug the wheel underneath the leg, and that'll start to light this leg up, pull this right hip back. Now same idea with this back leg. We engage this left glute that pushes our left hip forward. All right, now arms lift towards the air. All right, now feel the lengthening of your spine and feel this openness in this left hip flexor. And the hip flexors are what we're really gonna focus on in our warm-ups. So hip flexors are very tight. They're used in almost every movement we have in our bodies. So they tighten up pretty quick. So opening these guys up will really help with our back bends. All right, now we created some length in the spine. Now, maybe start to take this into back bend. Now, for that, you can bend the elbows. That'll give you a nice upper chest back bend, squeeze into the shoulder blades. If you'd like a little bit more leverage with the arms, you can reach the arms above the head, keeping the fingers long. Or if you want that leverage with a little bit of weight, you can grab the fingers, releasing the pointer fingers. And then that gives you a little bit of leverage to lift up and slowly make your way back. So 30 more seconds here. So finding some depth, coming out, releasing that depth, and finding some more depth. Nice, just about 10 more seconds. Keep that left hip pushing forward. Strong in the arms, one more breath. And slowly release as we rise up. Bring the hands down. And I really like half splits for a reverse or a recovery pose here. So slide the wheel out of the way. Lengthen this right leg. And then both for the releasing of the hip flexor and also the back bend, you can bring your gaze down towards your left knee. Or if you took a deep back bender and just need some release into your spine, start to bring your gaze to where your belly button is. And breathe into your upper back here. Releasing that stress and that tension we created in our left hip flexor. All right, then change, come forward. And we're just gonna move to our other side. So crescent moon on the opposite side, set this up. If you liked your foot pressing against the wall, you can press your right foot against the wall. We're gonna bring our left leg forward, wheel underneath this left hamstring behind left calf. And then walk that right leg back pretty far. So we wanna create some openness in this hip flexor before we even get into it. All right, now we have our base. Hands come to your hips. Take some time here to feel that strength. Right, so pushing the left heel into the mat to pull the heel back, really engaging with the wheel underneath. And then you can push into the back toes or the top of the foot, maybe even the right glute, and just kind of coax that right hip forward a little bit more. All right, once you're feeling good in your hips, arms start to lift towards the ceiling. All right, lengthening the arms above the head. Try not to get the shoulders into the ears. We want to still keep the shoulders away from the ears so we have some distance there. Now, the more we start to lift the arms above the head and the more we start to lengthen our torso, that right hip wants to move back. So push forward at the hip. Gaze starts to shift up. And then if we moved into our back bend on the other side, whether it's bent elbows, wherever you started, wherever you ended up, you got about 40-ish more seconds here. So all that length we created. Now adding the back bend into it. Personally, I like to interlace my fingers and release the pointer fingers after I've had a good warm up. And find that leverage to lift up and back. As you find your depth, still make sure that right hip is moving forward. So don't compromise your alignment for your depth. And always make sure to hit that depth first, or that alignment first, my bad. We'll take 10 more seconds here. All right, slowly inhale as we rise up. Hands come to the mat. Let's roll the wheel back, and we take our half splits. Straighten the left leg, gazing now towards the knee, then maybe taking the gaze a little bit deeper in towards where the belly button or where your belt buckle would be. Breathe here. 2 more breaths. All right, come forward. Sit back on the heels. Okay, so this next pose we're going to do is crescent lunge with our back leg on the wheel. So this could be pretty intense for your hip flexors. So I really want you to take this slowly and be very careful with your movements. Okay, the 2 big things that are precarious with this pose are, one, that your back supported foot is going to be on its wheel, where it could be a little wobbly at times, and 2, we're going to put a lot of potential open pressure into our hip flexors. So we're going to take this in stages, and I really want you to listen to your practice and be where you need to be. Challenge yourself, definitely, but be where you need to be, okay? So we're going to roll the wheel all the way against the wall. Place your left foot on top of the wheel, and then walk your right foot forward. All right, so walking the right foot pretty far forward. Left knee is still on the mat, just top of the left foot is on the wheel. All right, now I'm going to lift my back knee, slide the wheel slowly away from the wall with my foot, and wedge my foot between the wall and the wheel. All right, so now my back leg is supported by the wheel. Take your time. Pause if you need to, all right? more important for the alignment, again, than depth. All right, and then our right leg is forward, knee is right on top of the ankle, so more or less crescent lunge legs with just the back knee is lifted, back leg is lifted. All right, now this could be step one, this could be the pinnacle of where you want to go today. All right, so engaging and starting to drop that left hip down, feel that openness in the hip flexor. With the toes wedged between the wheel and the wall, you have a little bit of pressure you can put into the wall and let that foot rest on top of the wheel. Now, this is step one again. Stay here, or if you want a little bit more, one hand at a time, we push up into our right knee. Now, as we lift up, engage this left glute, all right? We're going to kind of rock that left hip down. Now, very, very stable here. Press into the front knee so you have a nice, strong, and stable spine. Now, for our last 10 seconds, you can stay right here or even come out, or last little bit, really, really, really engage. And then lift the arms above the head. So strong in that left glute. Push your back foot into the wall. Take one more breath. And then as we exhale, hands slowly make their way back to the knee, back to the floor. And release that left knee to the ground. And then slowly just sit back towards your left heel. Almost into that half splits again, but more so just letting the left hip flexor rest. A little bit of movement side to side. One more breath. All right, and then come forward. And we're just going to switch sides. Excuse me. All right, so bring your wheel back. Maybe just shift it over to the right just slightly. And then we'll set this up the same way. So having a little better understanding of where we're going. Take some time, set this up. Maybe figure out what little foibles we encountered on the other side. Start to work through some of that. So walking that left foot forward. Really make sure your base is strong first. And then we lift the back leg. Press the foot between the wheel and the wall. And then adjust your front leg as best you need to. We really want that left knee on top of the ankle, right? Really strong in this front leg. Hands are framing this left foot. Back knee is off the ground, and then we're finding this very, very deep, low crescent lunge. Hands to the mat. Take some time here. Engage your right glutes. So to kind of keep the hips safe on the right side. Now staying here, or if you built up to the knee on the other side, one hand at a time, build up to the knee, readjust. Engage your right glute, push the right hip down, press into the front knee so we're strong in our spine. Nice, sink a little deeper. Now not sinking into the hips, stay engaged. Last little bit, strong into your back, strong into that right glute, lift the arms, push the right hip forward. One more breath. And on the exhale, hands come to the knee, maybe all the way down to the ground. Once you're supported, drop the right knee. Sit the hips back towards that right heel. Straighten the right or left leg if that feels okay. Feel that release in the right hip flexor. Big breath in. Big exhale. All right, let's come forward. And sit back on the heels. All right. So we're going to leave the wheel off to the side for the next pose. So just put it wherever you like. Coming up to your mats in a standing position. And then again, make sure your wheel or your mat is pulled up against the wall. We're going to move into a crescent lunge version where we're going to use the wall to move into a back bend, okay? So if this is your first time doing this, we're going to start in a very narrow stance and work our way into a deeper stance. Okay, so first off, left heel is pressing against whatever wall you found. And then we're going to start with more of a pyramid length of a pose. So not traditional long crescent lunge because we want to figure out how deep our back bend gets before we get into our deep crescent lunge. Okay, so this is a safer way to get into this. All right, so starting from your pyramid type pose. All right, square the hips. Your back heel is pressing into the wall, so kind of play around with that. You're feeling that pressure. Okay, so it's a very stable back leg, right? That's going to help push your hips forward. Now we're going to lift the arms above the head, look up, look back, find the wall with the fingertips. All right, so this is the start of our back bend. You can walk the hands down. Now as we walk the hands down, we're bending that front knee, moving into this crescent lunge with a back bend variation. Now go to that first point, take about 2 or 3 breaths, be there with purpose, and then slowly come back up, straighten the front leg, and then we'll do that a couple more times. If you need a counter pose in between, this pyramid is very nice. But once you figure out how deep you can start to get into your back bends, if you want to find more depth, walk your right foot a little farther forward, so more into your traditional crescent lunge. You can find the wall first and then press into your front knee, or find your crescent lunge and then find the wall and walk your hands down to about shoulder height. And then as we press into the wall, we press into the heel of that back foot to press the hips forward. Find some depth. Then slowly come up. Take a little counter pose. We'll do that one more time. Take a few breaths here. All right. And then slowly lift back up. Choose to widen your stance, maybe narrow your stance. All right. Our last set here. So about 15, 20 seconds. Lift up, find the wall. Walking the hands down to about shoulder height. So don't want to come down too deep here. We're going to do some pretty nice deep wall walks here in a moment, but just getting ready for that. And bend the front knee, press into the back heel. Find that depth. One more breath. And slowly rise. Hands come back to your hips. This time step your left heel just a little bit away from the wall, and we'll come back into that pyramid pose. Hands coming and framing this right foot. And take a few breaths here. Gaze down. Gaze can come to your back toes, maybe to start reversing some of that back bend we took. Now if you want, you stay here. If you want a little hamstring work, lift your right leg. Walk the right leg up the wall for your standing half splits against the wall. Nice, walk as close or far away as you want to. This can be an open standing splits or closed hip standing splits. Just one more breath. And then if your foot's up the wall, everybody let's step back. Either foot down or foot steps back to left. We'll take a forward fold. Little sway side to side. All right, pause in center. Slight bend of the knees. Inhale, circle sweep the arms high. Hands to heart center. All right, we have that same thing second side. Right leg against the wall this time. Again, knowing where we're going. If you still want to start with the more narrow stance, that pyramid pose stance, you're welcome to it. If you knew that you can get a little bit deeper and you want to play with that depth, you can go ahead. We spent about 2 minutes in the other side, so about that same amount of time here, already on the clock. So about 30 seconds in already. All right, so finding your base, slowly and gently moving into your depth, even if you know how deep you can go. Paying attention to our breath, as we were talking about earlier. Taking about 3 breaths in whatever depth you find. And slowly coming back up. If you need the counter pose in between, straighten the front leg. You take your pyramid pose for a few breaths and release any tension you've created into your back bends. And when you're ready, come back into it. So still about 40 seconds left. So however many sets you want to squeeze out, however deep you want to go, take your time. Push the right hip forward, right heel's pressing into the wall. Taking my break here. In between, I'm going to take one more set for myself. So join me for this last set. And come back into this, whether you come into it from a straight leg or a bent knee. Find the wall. Press your fingers. Walk your hands down. Find a depth that feels good for you. Take 2 more breaths. And slowly rise. Hands come to the mat or to the hips. Step your right foot away from the wall, and then we'll gently come down into our pyramid pose. Now, even if you moved on the other side into that standing splits variation, take a few breaths here first. And then moving in standing splits, we come forward, bend the left leg, and then we lift the left leg up the wall. Whatever variation feels best for you. Two more breaths. And then standing splits, feet together, pyramid pose, feet together. And then separate those feet hip distance apart. Find that gentle sway again, little rocking side to side. We'll take a nice big back release here in just a moment. All right, pause here in center. Slowly rise up to a standing position. All right, let's grab our wheels. Before we get into our deepest back bend set, we're gonna just get some integrity back into our core. So grab your wheels. Let's bring the wheels to the back of our mat. We're gonna come into a plank pose with our feet on the wheel as an option. So all we're looking for is integrity back into the core, right? So if your version of plank doesn't involve the wheel today, that's fine. You can take plank with your hands and knees, right? Just navel into spine. If you want your version of plank, just go ahead and start now. And start it now. So my version of plank, my feet are on the wheel, just to add a little bit of stability there. Now find a little bit of movement, maybe forward and back. If your feet are on the wheel, you can gently start to rock the hips up, and then gently let those hips come back down. So finding some movement. Just make sure you're breathing. 20 more seconds here. Hands pressing into the mat. Strong into your forearms. Strong into your shoulders. Strong into your navel. Last breath. And then gently lower the knees back down to the ground. All right. And then slide the wheel off to the side. So the last back bends we're going to get into are wall walks. So we're just going to use the wall today. No need for the wheel, so just slide it off to the side. So standing up, whenever you're using the wall, back bends, inversions, things like that, a good barometer for distance of the wall is when you're standing, your palm is flat against the wall, one arm length away. It's a pretty good distance to start with. You might need to adjust from there, but that's a good starting point. All right. So for our wall walks today, some things you can play around with, because we're going to be doing this for about next 2 minutes or so. Some things you can play around with are the width of your feet. Personally, for the depth of back bends that I like to get into, I like to have my feet just outside of hip distance, and then my toes turned out, so my knees and my feet are lined up, okay? The toes turning out allows my hips to open up, so I can push my hips through and get deeper into my back bends. So I want you to play around with that. Feet can be a little more narrow if you like. It's your practice, really. So have some playfulness. Yoga practice, not yoga perfect, right? Okay, so starting with about an arm's length away from the wall. Okay, we're gonna lift the gaze, lift the arms, a little bend to the knees, reach back, find the wall, and then just hang out here. This is our first step, just finding the wall. And then you can figure out if you're too far away, if you're reaching for the wall, or if you're pretty comfortable here. Maybe a little bend to the knees, you can walk the hands down, maybe just one hand length. Keep the hips pressing forward, keep the glutes engaged, opening up through the chest. Pressing the hands on the wall, take one more breath. And then one hand at a time, slowly walk yourself up. All right, little rock of the shoulder side to side, a little bit of movement. All right, so that is about our shoulder wall walk, okay? So we can stay right there, work on that upper sternum, upper back bend. If you'd like, I'm gonna walk all the way down the wall, show you how that works, then show you some variations from there, okay? So playing around with this, right? Again, play around with the width of the feet. You don't have to follow me exactly. You know what we're doing now, so and kind of go at your own pace. Let me show you a full wall walk here. So again, arms length away from the wall, feet hip distance, lift up, find the wall, adjust the feet as needed, and then slowly, one hand at a time, start walking your way down the wall. It's good to have maybe a spotter if you're doing this by yourself. Once the hands come down to the ground, if they make it there, you can move into this wheel pose. Maybe lift the chin, press the chin and chest against the wall. Find this nice deep back bend. And then from here, if you want, you can come just straight down into your shoulders. Or if you want to try and walk your way back up, one hand at a time, all the way back up. And if you need a little counter in between, bend the knees, slowly come down, and releasing any tension in your back. So we're going to be here for about 1 more minute. All right, so 1 more minute worth of wall walks. Take your time, do what feels best for you. Spend some time down all the way into your wheel if that's where you want to go. Slowly walking down. Find a couple breaths. And slowly maybe walking back up. All right. 1 more time. About 15 seconds left. So I'm just going to hang out in this upper back bend, pushing through my glutes, opening through the chest. And take 2 more breaths. Slowly inhale, re-rise. All right, so let's spin around. Gonna face the wall that you're working with. Keep the knees and feet wide. Slowly come down, hands to the mat. Look between the knees. Walk yourself pretty close to your wall. Bend the knees a lot. Press your shoulder blades into the wall. And then slowly pressing the heels and straighten the legs. It's beautiful. Feel all that tension start to pull out of the back. You can continue that on. Bend the knees. Press your shoulders into the wall. Straighten the legs. Just 1 more breath. And then from here, just simply bend the knees. Come all the way down onto the mat. Ooh. Sit up nice and tall. Roll the shoulders up and down a couple times. Maybe rolling them forward if you rolled them back. All right, and then to, again, release some more tension, we're going to move into a plow pose. So no more wheel. So we're going to come onto our backs with your head facing the wall. But for this version, I'd like you to extend your arms above the head and just make sure your palms can touch the wall. It can just be fingertips, and that's fine. All right, now bring your hands down toward your hips. Lift your knees into your chest. Engage your core. Lift the hips up. We're going to bring the feet overhead and then taking the supported plow. So my feet touch the wall, which gives me a little bit of traction to press the balls of my feet into the wall, and then let this lower back really start to release from all that tension we've been creating in our back bends. So if that version feels good for you, then go ahead and try that. If that doesn't work for you and there's a different version of plow or a different lower back release you want to take right now, then please feel free to do so. Hands can always stay at your lower back too. You don't need to let the hands go. You don't need to let the lower back take all that. 10 more seconds. And then slowly support the body, release the feet away from the wall, and then we'll roll back down, knees into the chest. And then start by making slow, small circles with the knees. And then maybe start to get bigger with the knees, bigger with the circles. Really massaging through the lower back. And then opposite direction. Let's start with the small circles. Slowly spiraling to bigger circles. And pause in center. Extend the arms out wide. Drop the knees off to your left. Gaze to the right. Just bring a little bit of neutrality back to the spine. Gaze can stay towards the ceiling. Gaze can shift into your right palm. And feel the effects of the practice starting to take over. All those beautiful heart openers and back bends, and very engaged through our lower body and open through the hip flexors. Take one more breath here. And change back to center. You can squeeze the knees into the chest before you move to the opposite side, or just drop the knees off to the right. Gaze can shift to the ceiling, to the hand. Just one more breath. And change back to center. Squeeze the knees, take a breath. And release into your final Shavasana. Just settle in here for a few breaths, as much time as you need. Thanks again for joining. There'll be a couple more videos, probably 3 altogether, so stay tuned. Thank you so much. If you like the videos, hit like, subscribe if you like the channel. Have a beautiful day. Namaste.